Design and the Arts Fostering Optimism and Innovation. And in this short video, Lisa Cahill, the head of the Australian Design Centre, shares what makes her optimistic and what's helped the centre survive and thrive through the pandemic with Victor Perton and Gillian Corban. And Lisa, what makes you optimistic?
From where I sit, the design world and the creative world is a very optimistic space to be in. And I think that we're looking always in design at, solving problems and coming up with new solutions and looking to a better future. And so I think design by its very nature is optimistic, and I feel really buoyed by that optimism in the space in which I work. So if I wasn't naturally an optimistic person, I think I would be one by virtue of where I sit now.
Yeah, taking a risk and making a design. People often quote Dyson, the vacuum cleaner guy, who said that he had 5,000 models before he arrived at success. So design, you have to be an optimist, because a pessimist
you
gets
really do, and you're optimistic also about, sorry to interrupt, but you're optimistic also about failure. I mean, failure is optimistic in and of itself. You've tried and you've tested things and you've got better. So it's a continual kind of cycle, I guess, of change and optimism. Yeah.
Well, it's no wonder the Design Centre is such a leading centre, both for Australia and globally. It's just, you nail it, Lisa.
It really does make a difference. It means that you're seeing the world differently, you're looking out differently, and to survive, you have to have really creative strategies. Okay, Lisa, do tell us what you've been up to, because you've been up to all sorts of exciting things lately. Do you want to share that with us?
Perhaps I should preface what I'm going to say about this last couple of months with a few things about who we are. Does that sound like a good start? Yes. Okay.
Sure.
So, Australian Design Centre is a centre, a not-for-profit arts space with a national footprint through our touring program. So we create exhibitions, events, festivals, all sorts of things around design and contemporary craft. And we do some of those things here in Sydney in our Darlinghurst space, and some of them we take on tour around the country. So, we're kind of everywhere. And in any one year, we probably work with around 400 creative practitioners across the country, be they artists, designers, makers. And we're part of a network too, like a network of organisations similar in size to us, independent organisations that make up the Australian Craft and Design Centre network. So I think that's really important too, to know that in each state, and a couple of organisations in some of the bigger states get together and collaborate as a network on making opportunities and creating platforms for makers and designers to showcase their work across the country and to connect those creative practitioners with audiences for Australian craft and design, both here in Australia and globally. So it's a really exciting space to be working in. And as I said earlier, I do feel really optimistic about the programs that we do and our capacity to make change in that creative space. So in the last couple of months, like everybody, we found that we were having to shift quite substantially what we do and close the centre here in the country and bring all our touring exhibitions back home, which is no mean feat because they involve quite a lot of freight. And but anyway, we did all of those logistical things, and we closed down and we talked about how we might work together as a team. I have a small team. There's only 8 of us, and we all work remotely during that period. Up until about the end of May, and then started to think about how we might reopen. So in that couple of months, it was about thinking that how we could pivot our programming, and a lot of arts organisations very, very quickly and in a very inspiring way took their activities online, and you saw lots of creative activity happening digitally. And I think, as Gillian, you said, were kind of swamped with it in a way. There was so much to see and to experience, and a lot of walking outside with no digital input, and just trying to stay sane during that period. But so I think for me, we had a lot of digital material that we could already put out there, and we ended up speaking to our audiences via our newsletters and so on a little bit more frequently than we otherwise would have, but we didn't actually create anything really new in a digital sense. What we thought about is what could we do to help the artists, designers and makers who we work with during this period, and to get through this period and to restart after this period. So we looked at doing a couple of, we looked at the possibilities available to us in different funding and grant opportunities that were out there, and we looked at how we might be able to fund some new projects which would give I guess a new and more optimistic platform for people coming out of the COVID period rather than while they were in it. So we created 3 different projects. One of those I'm very pleased to be working with Gillian on. So courtesy of Corban and Blair, we made, and I'm going to put my gloves on and show you a little bit of this, if you'll bear with me, or at least one glove. It'll take me a while to get them on. We made just a very small handmade journal, and we sent that journal out to 100 different designers around Australia, and we asked those designers, artists, creatives of in different spaces, and people who are thinkers in the space as well, I think, not necessarily those that are hands-on creating, but a real mix of people in our orbit. And we asked them to document something of their experience during the COVID period. And so some of those journals are starting to come back, and I just wanted to give you a tiny little preview of this particular one. And this artist is a contemporary jeweller, and she's been looking at the tide lines around where she lives on the New South Wales south coast. And so she's been drawing those tide lines, and just really, really beautiful, just meditations on her observations of the coast and walking along the coast, and looking at how that kind of imagery, those lines, will feature in her work going forward. So it just gives you a little bit of a sense of what these are going to look like. I mean, we didn't have any expectation as to what people would create and how they would create this work, and I still don't really, but the few that are coming in have given me I'm really excited and optimistic about the fact that we're going to have a document of the COVID period from a design perspective that we'll be able to display for our audiences in a digital way for a broad audience, and also in a physical exhibition sense in our space later in the year. So that's one project that we're working on. And another project, Isolate Make, we're calling it. We have engaged 10 makers who are local to Sydney, with some support from the City of Sydney Council, who's been amazing in terms of how they're supporting cultural organisations and artists through this period in the city area. And we're engaging 10 makers, and they're going to be documenting and talking and writing and taking video and photos of work that they're doing during this COVID period. So work they're doing from home, looking at how their practice might have shifted as a result, and then at the end of that we'll have a great body of work, I hope, that we'll be able to exhibit here in the centre alongside the journals later in the year. So that's really exciting too, and I think there's a lot of energy around that. Aside from that, just looking for different ways in which we can support artists, and another project that we started called Object 150. So we have a retail store here at the centre as well, and so what we've done is set aside our commission as an organisation, and any sales is going directly to the artists to support them during a period where most artists' forms of income in terms of retail and markets and things like that are no longer viable for them right now, or haven't been up till now. So that's another way. And then we have also selected a number of artists and asked them to put them out there online through our retail store in a project called Object 150, where for $150 you can commission that maker to make you something. So that's actually going really well. Lots of them are getting commissions, and people are getting a unique, bespoke, handmade product for their $150. So, it's a bit of mix, trialing some new things, testing some new things, and collaborating with a whole range of people who we haven't previously had the opportunity to collaborate with. And I'm looking forward to working with Gabrielle on something that she's doing, and we've worked with Gabrielle a lot over time as well. So, and for me personally, I think I've really found the whole period to be a feature of the whole period to be a spirit of generosity, really. I mean, people are being so generous around this time. And if that, even small examples, like my neighbours have been swapping their baked goods, so there was a loaf of sourdough will appear. And, and so there's all sorts of things like that, which I think is really fantastic and makes us feel good during this period, which otherwise is pretty tragic on many levels around the world and here in Australia. So thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. That's fantastic. You're doing terrific work, and I'm sure lots of creative people are really delighted with the support that they're getting. Yeah.
Well, we hope you're inspired too by Lisa, her optimism, and how she has thrived and supported designers and artists through this pandemic and set up a better normal for the centre and its community. If you'd like to share a story of hope and optimism with the Centre for Optimism, we'd be very welcome, and just contact me. And if you'd like to subscribe to the Centre for Optimism, if you go to the subscription page and use the discount code DESIGN, you'll get a free 1-year membership.